Wall Street Wrap-Up is supported by Bamboolas, featuring live music and coming soon, tapas and wine upstairs. Bamboolas, the heartbeat of Frenchman Street.
This week on Wall Street Wrap-Up, well, they did it just as we thought they would. The Federal Reserve raised rates for the 10th consecutive time, another 25 basis points. And we're going to tell you what that means to you. Fed Chairman Jay Powell indicates that this will be the last cut depending on the data. Can we bank on that? Title 42 for immigration policy ends next week. While millions of illegal aliens have already poured across our southern borders, the Border Patrol is bracing for new chaos just 7 days from now. Darden Restaurants, owners of Capitol Grill, Olive Garden, and Longhorn Steakhouse, has just added Ruth Chris to the roster of restaurants for $715 million. And to think, it all started with one location in New Orleans when Ruth Fertel saw an ad for a steakhouse being sold for $22,000. I'm Andre Laborde. We've got these stories and more. It's Friday and it's time for Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, I'm Andre Laborde. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up. It's Friday, May the 5th, 2023. Well, do you own cryptocurrency as Bitcoin, or maybe you're thinking about jumping into the crypto pool? Before you do, you'll be wanting to watch our guest tonight. We'll be talking with Brady Dale. He is the co-writer of the Axios crypto newsletter, and he's the author of about-to-be-released book SBF for Sam Bankman-Fried. How did one guy scam so many people in crypto exchange? We'll talk to Brady because he talked to Sam Bankman-Fried. Brady Dale was going to be with us in just a moment. But this week, the Federal Reserve did what we expected them to do and raise interest rates for the 10th consecutive time. Now, this brings the interest rates that the Federal Reserve charges banks to 5%. But now this is not what we pay. Now, so how does this affect the average consumer? From 1 year ago, a 30-year mortgage is up 56% to 6.5%. A new car loans are up over 6.5%, and interest on your credit cards, they're up over 20%. This week, stocks ended positive for technology, healthcare, and utilities. Both the Dow and the S&P 500 ended negative for the week, but the Nasdaq, well, they edged higher for the week. Sector laggards this week were energy, financials, and the communication services. And this week, the Dow Jones closed today at 33,667, and that was down 1.25% for the week. The S&P 500, they closed today at 4,134, which was down 0.8 of a point, and the Nasdaq, they closed today at 12,235, which was up 0.1 of a point for the week. Yesterday, Apple released their second quarter earnings. Now, here's an interesting bit of trivia about Apple stock. According to Vetify, Apple is such a popular stock that 347 ETFs have Apple as their top 15 holdings. And there are 52 ETFs where Apple is 10% or more of the weight of the ETF. The national debt ceiling is the top concern of whether both sides can agree to a compromise in raising of how much more we can borrow to pay our bills, which is coming more than what's coming in. Now, in 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking with Senator Bill Cassidy about raising the debt ceiling and how to pay Social Security. That's Senator Bill Cassidy in 2 weeks. Coinbase Exchange warned investors that bank disruptions are rattling the crypto industry. They're also in a gigantic battle of crypto regulation with the SEC. With bank failures, the SEC wants to regulate Coinbase, and that's called a segue into my guest tonight. Brady Dale, he's just written a great book about the collapse of FTX and Sam Bankman-Fried, possibly fraud of billions of dollars, and he's here with us tonight. Hi, Brady. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Last week, we had in our show, but we had the CEO of Social Capital, Chamath Palihapitiya. And in addition to being CEO of Social Capital, but I think because of the fact that he's co-owner of I think it's the Golden State Warriors and a number of other things. But he said something, he said, cryptocurrency in America is dead. Mm-hmm. And of course, because if he says something, then news writers pick it up. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think what he's saying is it's really hard to run a crypto business here in the United States. And I think that is increasingly true. Just this week, the Biden administration put out a proposal, a blog post about their prior proposal for a 30% tax on all crypto mining, all Bitcoin mining, mainly in the United States for the electricity that they use, which would be a giant cost increase and just makes it very clear that the Biden administration just doesn't really welcome crypto here. Similarly, it looks, I mean, a Wells notice has been given to Coinbase suggesting that the SEC is going to sue them for something. We don't know what. I mean, that's, what precedes a lawsuit. It just seems like many parts of the administration have decided to make the cryptocurrency industry into an enemy. And that said, I mean, you can't stop people from, buying Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies if they want. So that's not going to die.
Well, just about a week or so ago, there was a CoinDesk conference in Austin, Texas. And
Mhm.
from what I understand is that the number one topic with everybody, with the attendees and people talking, was of regulation. That was what people were wondering. Is this what you're talking about? Do you think that crypto will be regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission?
I don't think anything's going to happen, to be honest. I mean, that's that's my take. And I'll tell you, as a former employee of CoinDesk, who has been to that conference a ton of times, that's been the main topic as long as I've been in this space, going all the way back to 2017. The industry's
Okay.
been asking for rules of the road here forever. They've never gotten them. The country has done nothing. I definitely don't think you should look for any kind of regulations promulgated out of the SEC. The most likely path in which rules for the road would happen in the United States is coming from Congress. But as we know, Congress is not great at passing legislation these days, and for whatever reason, and I think this is very strange, but it's just the reality. Crypto has really become a partisan issue. By and large, Democrats aren't wild about cryptocurrency, and Republicans are. The industry has been crossing its fingers that they'll have, good, helpful, smart rules in the United States for as long as I've been around, and nothing has ever happened.
The power to tax is probably one of the greatest powers that Congress has. So when you have something within your grasp, like the US dollar, they can be able to tax that. But when you talk about crypto, that is offshore, that is, it's not exactly being able to find out exactly how much things you buy. How do you tax it?
Oh, well, that's the one thing that has been worked out. I mean, kind of. I mean, the industry would like to see some updates there, but the IRS said a long time ago, I think it was 2016, they said it's just property. If you make some money, if you buy some Bitcoin, it goes up in value and you sell it, it's just capital gains tax, as simple as that. The objection that the industry has to that is if these instruments start to get used in more of a day-to-day basis, if people really start using them for payments or whatever, it'll be weird to pay capital gains every time you buy a cup of coffee. And the United States has dealt with that in other situations too. If you bring a foreign currency into the U.S. and you make some money off of that, and you make some small trades with it, you buy things with it. That isn't taxed, like for profits under if it's like around $600 or something like that. So the industry would like to see something like that for cryptocurrency. But yeah, taxation is the one thing that has been dealt with. Obviously, there's a lot of people who aren't paying their taxes on money they make on crypto, and the IRS is working more and more on that all the time. Bitcoin's gone up a lot over time, but there's more reasons why people hold Bitcoin besides just the profit motive. I mean, that's the main reason. And people hope it'll be more valuable later on. But I mean, the main thing that Bitcoin offers is censorship resistant money, and money that property that nobody can take away from you. You can memorize a string of words that will allow you to access your Bitcoin, and you can take that across borders, and no one will know that you have it. It's a kind of property that's really difficult to confiscate. And for some people, that's really powerful. It's not very appealing to people in the United States because we don't have a lot of issues with people confiscating our property, taking things from us, censoring what we can say. We're a pretty free country, but there's other places in the world where there's a lot more restrictions on folks, and so they like having something of value that they can completely control themselves and isn't really visible.
Well, to my understanding that there's only 21 million
Hmm.
Bitcoin. How do we
Hmm.
know that? I mean, can we be sure?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the whole point of Bitcoin is don't trust, verify. I mean there isn't 21 million yet. I think we're at like 19 million something because a few more come out with each block. It's going to take a long time until the final Bitcoin is mined, like 100 years or so. But yeah, you can run a node. You can see in the Bitcoin ledger where every single Bitcoin has come out, who has every single one. And you can add all those up, and you can see that that number equals what it should equal. I mean, that's the whole point of blockchains is it's all verifiable, and that's why it comes back to one of the weird things about the whole regulatory question. A big part of the reason why you need regulation in financial markets is because you don't know everything that's going on. But when you talk about cryptocurrency, everything that's happening on crypto blockchains is all viewable on chain. It's all right there. I mean, it's not just, regulators don't have access to just some quarterly report from companies. They can see literally everything that happened in a lot of these financial products.
What about domestically versus internationally? Is there any kind of a percentage that of the money that's being made from crypto? Is it how much percentage domestically do you think there is internationally?
That is a good question. I mean, the US is certainly the biggest market for cryptocurrency just because the US is the biggest market for just about everything, right? I mean, it's the biggest economy in the world. So, it is the number one player. And it also, the US has a lot more people who are comfortable with risk in it. And, it's clearly a risk asset. There's a lot of people with money to burn here. And so that has made this country the biggest market for crypto. But there's tons of people who use it as an investment around the world, and more in the last few years, especially in places that have weak local currencies, places that don't feel like they can trust their local currencies, they aren't a good store of value. We see more and more cryptocurrencies getting picked up there. Not so much Bitcoin, honestly. It's the thing that you've probably heard about is stable coins. These coins that act like dollars. They effectively are dollars, and they have dollars backing them. Those have become really popular around the world because there's something you can get a hold of. Again, you don't need a bank account, you don't need a custodian to hold on to them, and you can have your money in a way that you can control. And people are actually even using them for trading. In places where their currencies just aren't trustworthy. And that was kind of the point all along.
Hmm. Well, when you talk about stablecoin,
Hmm.
Bitcoin, Dogecoin, there are many different types of cryptocurrency.
So
Is
many.
there one better than the other?
One better than the other. I mean, I try not to get into those sorts of roles as a journalist. I mean, I will say Bitcoin is the oldest. It's been the most reliable. It hasn't glitched in serious ways in a very, very long time. Ethereum is the second largest, and it is also extremely popular because it's the one that made money programmable. Beyond that, there's also stablecoins, and stablecoins. There's a bunch of stablecoins. A few of them are big. Those have also been really important. And beyond that, almost every other cryptocurrency out there is sort of looking for its place, looking for its real product market fit, and they really haven't had it. Most of them are imitating either Bitcoin or Ethereum, with the one exception. And I say this in my book. I think people will laugh. People do laugh when I say this, but I think it's true. I think Dogecoin has actually become a canonical blockchain. It is the original meme coin. It reflects this idea of a community can create value together by creating a narrative around a coin that represents an idea. I think for a while that seemed silly, and now it's starting to look like it's really a pretty meaningful concept. And so I think Dogecoin is also like a unique and important chain out there.
With all the bank failures that we've had so far, and I mean, when I say all, I mean, we're talking about Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank, and who knows what may be coming up in the future. But does that have any effect on the price of cryptocurrency?
I mean, when the economy is uncertain and it's not growing well, by and large, people get out of risk assets because cryptocurrency is certainly a risk asset. Cryptocurrency does at least provide a way to hedge the risk of the traditional financial system, and there is some risk there, And so, as a hedge, more and more people are getting interested in it all the time. But by and large, when the economy is shaking, Bitcoin's going to do worse because it is a risk asset, and people get out of risk assets when economies are shaky.
When you have an exchange, and let's just say FTX, okay, that
Yeah.
was Sam Bankman-Fried's, and you're a holder of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, other types. You're like in your book, you were using the example of like, let's say you have a shoebox and you have some
Yeah.
coins in a shoebox, okay? And
Right.
let's say, let's pull a figure out, as you put, let's say you have $500 worth of coins and you tape
Yeah.
it up and you shake it up. You still have $500 worth of coins in there.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. Mix it up all you want. Still
Right.
$500 in there. Yep.
So when you've got an exchange like FTX, were they the holder of your shoebox?
Exactly, they were. And this is the crazy so this is a point that I really try to make in the book is, you know, banks no, and I'm not saying this to be controversial or critical or anything. This is just the way banks work. No bank has all the money that people deposit in it. That's not how banking works. People put in deposits into banks, and the banks lend it out and try to make more money on that and grow the economy. That's what we want banks to do. That's good. But so there's really no bank out there that can survive a big bank run because none of them have all your deposits, right? And they say like when lots of people are pulling money out of a crypto exchange, they often will call it a bank run. But the truth is, if you're a well-run crypto exchange who's doing things like you should, a bank run is bad news for you. You don't want to lose customers, but you should always have all the money because your business isn't to lend things out. Your business is to just let people deposit their crypto assets, let them trade with each other. Some people will make money, some people will lose money. As the exchange, you'll make a little bit of money off of every trade. But just like the shoebox, all of the money should always be there. And that's the problem with FTX is lots of people got scared about FTX. They did a bunch of withdrawals and it turned out that all the money wasn't there. But it should have been because exchanges aren't banks.
Well, does an exchange, I guess my thought is that if using the example of a bank, a bank may not charge for a checking account unless you have certain fees attached to it.
Mhm.
But how does an exchange make money like FTX?
They make money on the trades, and people are trading all the time. So every time anyone trades, a little tiny sliver of that trade goes off to the exchange. It's a great business. I mean, if once you have a lot of people on there making a lot of trades, you're just printing money. And this is what's so crazy about FTX is like it had achieved that. It had a ton of users, it had a ton of assets on the exchange. People were trading like crazy. This was just free money every day. They had solved the hard problem of getting people in the door. And so this is what's so nuts is that they like took these bigger swings. They were printing money, but it wasn't enough. They had to take more risks to go even further. But yeah, an exchange is a great business. Every time someone makes a trade, you make a little profit off of that, and it's really easy once you have them in there.
Well, you had the opportunity, you actually talked to Sam Bankman-Fried. Was he naive, or was he like Bernie Madoff wanting to scam, or was he just naive?
I don't think he wanted to scam anybody, and I don't think he was naive. And Sam, the thing to understand about Sam is he wanted to fix the world, and if he was going to fix the world, he needed a giant pile of money to do it. And as far as he was concerned, like this is how Sam thought about things, right? If there was like a decent chance of him fixing the world, like if there was if he saw like a 50% chance that he would fix the world and like a 10% chance that his risky moves would go south and he would lose a bunch of customers' money, he would be like, that's a trade I should take because it's worth more to fix the world. Because he thought he was the smartest guy in the room. He could get away with it. And then once he had that giant war chest built up, he would do so much good for humanity that people would, eventually forgive him if eventually they figured out he had been too risky once upon a time.
He paid $135 million for the Miami arena to have it the FTX arena. And he even stated, in fact, you have it in the book, where he said, we can pay this in 1 year because it was a 19-year commitment. And he said, we can do this in 1 year and not even have to worry about the other 19 years. For $135 million, he's got this big pile of money. Now, of course, the pile of money was other people's money that was not to be used.
It's one of my favorite moments in the whole FTX story because it's like, on the face of it, at the time, it looks like a great deal. If you watch any of those basketball games, it said FTX all over the place. I mean, and like obviously tons of people watch basketball. The idea of it was like $135 million for 9 years for 19 years. I mean, it was like $7 million a year. It's like really seems very cheap. And so it seems really smart. And yet at the same time, when I saw that happen, in real time as a reporter in the crypto space, it just gave me this queasy feeling. And so I think that really was the moment where we also started to see Sam kind of get addicted to the fame and sort of convince himself that more attention was always good. And so it might have been that on paper that the Miami Heat arena was a perfectly legitimate deal. It was actually kind of a really good deal. But I do think it sort of marked the moment in which Sam and FTX really got addicted to people sort of seeing them as big and important and revolutionary and super large.
What about, I mean, in addition, most people know about the Miami arena, but he also at the same time did UC Berkeley as well, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. And they scrubbed the name off of there as fast as they could, like after the thing fell apart. Yeah, I mean, the biggest sports deal he actually made was for an esports team. That was the biggest one of all.
Was there anybody at at both Alameda, which was the hedge fund, and also FTX. Did anybody want to tell the emperor he wasn't wearing any clothes to go, hey, what you're doing is wrong? Or did they all drink the Kool-Aid?
Well, a bunch of people quit the month before everything fell apart, and that's one thing I detail in the book. There was this string of departures. So a lot of people were leaving. A lot of people were feeling. I think some of those folks were probably feeling queasy. I think we've seen Brett Harrison make some statements in the last few months to sort of hinted that he was like, kind of nervous about things. And I think it's also telling, that Harrison hasn't really gotten into any trouble because, of course, his role, FTX US, that was the sort of the US subsidiary, and the whole point of that was to be the kind of like very by the book US representation of the company that they could eventually, use to become a bigger and bigger presence here in the US. Coinbase really dominates here. They were more of a global company, but they were trying to get FTX US going well. So I think they didn't want, if the other executives knew they were doing some dicey things, they didn't want any of that to be on Brett Harrison. But I think we have some indications that maybe he was also getting kind of nervous, and that might sort of explain his departure. Which when it happened, Sam goes on CNBC and tries to sort of describe it as, this was expected for a very long time. But as I say in my book, if you sort of watch his body language and watch the way he's talking on that interview, he seems much less confident than usual. It seems like it was probably actually sort of sudden. I don't really know, but that was my read.
Well, Sam has stated that he has no money, but he's got a bail of $250 million. And
Yeah.
to my understanding, two Stanford professors posted the bail, which even at a
Mhm.
10%, 10% of 250 is $25 million. I mean, I know they pay Stanford professors well, but not enough for 25 million. Do you think actually that he does have money that he funneled to them to give him his bail?
I've heard all kinds of rumors along those lines. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, Sam was not he wasn't really actually a crypto guy. This is an important thing to understand about Sam. Sam just saw crypto as the best place to make a lot of money fast. But he did understand the crux of it fairly well. And I've heard tons of rumors that like early on they were loading up tons of cold wallets with all kinds of like secret Bitcoin and stashing it all over the world. I certainly don't know. I mean, that's just speculation. But a lot of those Stanford professors, they actually do have tons of money. I can't remember who the guys were, but they start startups. They do consulting for startup companies. They have patents that get sold. There's ways in which people can get lots of money. Stanford, the Valley is awash in cash, so it's not too hard for me to believe that they've got a couple of friends who are able to cover that bond.
You talked in the book, and sometimes the two words are used interchangeably, incorrectly so, but nerd and geek. In your book, I mean, do you think Sam Bankman-Fried was a nerd or a geek?
I think he was a geek, definitely not a nerd. I describe him as a geek as a geek with swagger in there. To me, the difference between nerds and geeks and people in the dorkier parts of the world, which I've always been one of them, love to debate these terms. But to me, a nerd is a truly socially awkward person, a person who has their like weird interests because that's a way that they're able to relate to other people. Whereas a geek is a person who's just sort of like weirdly obsessed with something that other people aren't as into. I think it's clear that Sam was a very charismatic guy. From the earliest days of Alameda and FTX, lots of people were, working night and day. As I understand it early on, a lot of them weren't really being paid. It was just kind of like a mission thing, a big idea. He was able to inspire people to do this. He was able to excite people to like join him and be with him. Gary Wang had like a job at, I think, Google at the time that he came to work for Sam. That's a big risk. I mean, people believed in this guy. So this idea that he was this awkward weirdo who couldn't look people in the eye, I don't buy it at all. This was a charismatic person with a strong personality, strong social skills, who knew how to motivate people.
Do you think he'll see jail time?
I mean, it's a lot of money lost.
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's like billions of dollars have disappeared. I don't know. And when I talked to Sam, he was defiant. He really seemed to have a story in his mind where he could be seen as innocent. And thus far, he's still pled not guilty to all charges. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible, but it's hard to believe at this point, especially when you consider the fact that the U.S. government just doesn't seem to be that crazy about cryptocurrency, and when there's a sector it doesn't like it likes to set examples, and so yeah, I mean, if I had to bet, yeah, probably jail time, probably a decent amount.
The book is called SBF, coming out next week. Brady, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks a ton for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Brady. Well, hey, if you've got a question or a comment about the show, we would love to hear from you. Make it concise, make it pithy, and write us and notice the new email address at andre@benacapital.com. So let's take a look at the markets heading into next week. But first, what construction started 119 years ago today that's been called one of the greatest engineer marvels of the world? What was it? We've got the answer in a moment. Well, what construction started 119 years ago today that's been called one of the greatest engineering marvels of the world? The start of the Panama Canal started today, May the 5th, 1904, and it took 10 years to complete. Well, let's have a wrap up on Wall Street. Jamie Dimon, CEO and chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase, will be deposed on what the bank may or may not have known about business relationships between Jeffrey Epstein and J.P. Morgan Chase. That deposition will be on May the 26th. And according to Barron's in a column by assistant editor Andrew Barry, who, by the way, was a guest on our show just a couple of weeks ago, Bud Light sales have fallen 26% as the backlash continues to worsen over Dylan Mulvaney and his endorsement. Now, this 26% drop is outside of what is purchased in restaurants and bars, but in stores and groceries for home consumption. So what are consumers drinking instead? Well, Coors Light is up almost 13.5%, and Miller Lite, apparently it is Miller time, jumped to just under 13.5%. And Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is proposing a $17 minimum wage. Presently, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. Now, that's a 134% increase, even though many states do require much higher pay. Now, according to this chart, the top 5 states to pay a minimum wage is Washington State at $15.74 an hour, followed by California at $15.50 and Massachusetts at $15 an hour. Looting of stores has become a major problem in many urban cities, but nowhere more than in San Francisco. Due to crime, shoplifting, and the safety of their employees, many stores are now leaving downtown San Francisco. Well, this week, Nordstrom's has said that they too will be pulling their stores out of the downtown city by the bay. In the last 18 months, there have been over 20 stores pulling out of the downtown San Francisco area, and these have included Banana Republic, Walgreens, Saks Fifth Avenue, Office Depot, and many others. Well, that's a wrap-up on Wall Street Wrap-Up. So, how will stocks fare for the remainder of the year? Well, you will not want to miss next week's show when we're going to be talking to the Chief Global Investment Strategist for Charles Schwab, Jeff Kleintop. And that's our show. Have a fun weekend with the ones you love and a productive week ahead. I'll see you next week. Remember, if it's Friday, it's Wall Street Wrap-Up. I'm Andre Laborde, and remember, money never sleeps. Good night.
Wall Street Wrap-Up is supported by Bamboolas, featuring live music and coming soon, tapas and wine upstairs. Bamboolas, the heartbeat of Frenchman Street.